Shannon, as usual, was making the bed and cleaning the room after the visitor had left the hotel. Her shift was in full swing, and Shannon enjoyed working there, especially because it came with accommodations. In between her tasks, Shannon reflected on the tumultuous events of her life. There was much to contemplate, as fate had not been kind to her. Shannon was born and raised in a small village, in an ordinary and financially struggling family. Her father worked at the sawmill, while her mother worked as an accountant. Their meals mostly consisted of pasta and potatoes, with occasional delicacies reserved for holidays. Trendy outfits or the latest gadgets were out of the question. During school, Shannon and her best friend Lisa often dreamed about growing up, finishing school and leaving together to conquer the capital. In the girls' naive dreams, there were rich princes and prestigious jobs, just like in the movies. After all, they were both pretty. After graduation, Lisa rushed to Shannon and excitedly exclaimed, "Well, Shannon, I found a job in the capital, at a trendy new cafe. They're hiring me as a kitchen assistant. A friend of my mother helped me by putting in a good word. You should come with me, just like we dreamed. It will be more fun together. I'm sure they will hire you as a waitress. Our options here have run out. Everyone else has left. Are we worse than them? What can we do here? It's a dead end. I'm so tired of these dusty streets, narrow-minded folks, and drunks at the entrances. Life is entirely different there." Shannon became excited by the idea, and after her friend left, she approached her parents. "Mum, Dad, I'm leaving. Lisa offered me a job at the cafe in the capital, and she insists that I go with her. Maybe we can make it there and settle in the big city. Will you allow me to go?" Upon hearing this unexpected news, her mother immediately cried and tried to dissuade her. "Oh, my daughter, what are you thinking? Why do you want to go to the capital? I thought you would go to sewing school in a neighbouring town, and then we could arrange for you to work at a tailor shop. Skilled seamstresses are always in demand, and you wouldn't be penniless. It's better to stay here. At least you won't go hungry, and we will be nearby." Shannon scoffed. "I don't want your tailor shop. I don't want to live like this. It's not for me. No, I have made up my mind and I'm going. It's a swamp, a dead end here, filled with alcoholics and pensioners. Young people are leaving for better places. And I want to try. I'm already 18, and it's my decision how to live my life. I will get ready before Lisa changes her mind." Shannon started to go through her documents and accidentally stumbled upon her adoption certificate. It clearly stated that she was not her parents' biological child. She had been adopted from an orphanage when she was 3 years old. In shock, Shannon walked out of the living room and asked her parents, "Mum, what is this? Is this true? Why didn't you tell me all this time? How could you? I asked 100 times when I was a child who I resembled. And you always said I was like my grandmother, God rest her soul." Her mother covered her face with her hands and wept, while her father began to explain everything. "Don't judge us, daughter. Listen to me. Your mother and I longed for a child. We visited countless doctors, but it was all in vain. The verdict was harsh. We would never have children of our own. Years passed quickly, and without a child, we felt incomplete. So we decided to adopt a baby from the orphanage. We entered the playroom, and you came running to us, extending your arms and asking, 'Are you my daddy and mummy? Can I be your daughter?' We all cried. It was such a touching moment. From that day on, we were inseparable. We didn't even consider anyone else. Yes, we may not be millionaires, and we live modestly, but we loved you with all our hearts. We sacrificed ourselves to ensure you were dressed as well as anyone else. Did you really think your life would have been better if you had stayed at the orphanage? Why didn't we tell you? Because we never saw you as an adopted child. You are our daughter, and that's it. We will always wait for you and love you." Shannon felt a deep sense of shame. Her father was right. Parents are not the ones who give birth and abandon, but the ones who raise and love. She had always felt her parents' love, and now it was clear to her. Shannon approached her parents and embraced them. "You're right, Daddy. I am sorry for my outburst. This news came as a shock to me. I never imagined I would be adopted. Thank you for raising me and loving me. You have never been and will never be strangers to me. Please support me and allow me to go. I am not simply searching for an easy way out or a good job. I want to experience a better life." Shannon's parents accepted her decision with heavy hearts. They gave her all their small savings, hoping it would be enough for her initial needs. So Shannon and Lisa embarked on their journey to conquer the capital. At the beginning, things were going really well. Shannon was hired as a waitress, and she and the girls rented a 2-bedroom apartment. Life was exciting. Despite the exhaustion after long shifts, the girls still dreamed of finding their princes. And one day, a prince walked into their cafe. Shannon noticed every detail of his features as he carelessly fixed his hair, sat down, smiled charmingly, and looked directly at her. "I'm ready to order," he said. Shannon didn't walk, she floated. For some reason, this stylish and well-dressed young man instantly caught her attention. She graciously served him, prioritizing him over other customers. When he left, she found a note on a napkin with sprawling handwriting. "Waiting for you tomorrow at 8 p.m. sharp at the entrance to the cafe. I hope to see you, my queen." Shannon almost jumped for joy, and of course the next day she arrived at the designated place at the appointed time. Despite her doubts, she couldn't pass up the chance to get to know him better, even though her friend Lisa warned her. "Where are you going? You don't know him at all. What if he's a fool or a maniac? Are you not scared of potential dangers?" But Shannon felt that he was a great guy, and she couldn't pass up such an opportunity. While she was nervous and contemplating, a fancy car pulled up at the cafe, and her prince got out and extended his hand. "Well, hello, my queen. Take a seat in the car. My name is Kyle, and I'm glad you decided to come after all. I promise you an unforgettable day. Our first date will be memorable." Blushing, Shannon got into the car, and they drove off. Not just anywhere, but to a concert of a trendy youth band. It was almost impossible to get tickets, as they were expensive and sold out in advance. Shannon had never experienced such emotions from a live performance before. Surrounded by crowds of fans, she felt the holiday atmosphere and had the most beautiful guy by her side. The romance with Kyle progressed quickly. Shannon was over the moon. After all, she had never been given flowers before, and now there were roses in armfuls, ardour and confessions, and passionate kisses in the moonlight. It felt like she had won the lottery. Soon, Kyle proposed to Shannon, and they became officially engaged. After the engagement, Kyle invited the bride to live together, and she agreed. Shannon hoped that he would immediately rent them a separate place, but the guy was happy to live in the huge house of his parents, and so far he was in no hurry to solve this issue. Except that his mother was not delighted with the idea. She considered Shannon a cheap provincial, not worthy of their son. Shannon also felt coldness on her part, but nevertheless decided to move. Kyle also persuaded her to quit her job at the cafe. "Honey, why would you want to work there? My family has enough money to support us. We won't need anything. Besides, I'm jealous and don't want other men looking at you. You're mine and no one else's. Do you understand?" Lisa, upon hearing about everything, began to argue with Shannon. It was the first time they fought like crazy. "Shannon, what are you doing? Come to your senses. Why are you leaving your job? It's a normal job that pays well, and you'll always have money in your pocket and receive decent tips. Don't you realise that living under the same roof as your fiancé's parents and depending on them is a foolish idea? Why doesn't Kyle marry you now? Then you would have been his lawful wife, and now you're just a guest who could be kicked out in a minute. You're being foolish, Shannon. You'll regret it later. Shannon took great offence at her friend and tried to justify her decisions. You're just jealous of my happiness, aren't you? Well, I'll be living in a mansion while you work in the kitchen. My Kyle loves me and will never hurt me. I didn't think you could be so mean, Lisa. Shannon imagined a future filled with happiness with her lover. She would help at home, greet her beloved when he returned from work, watch romantic movies together, go for walks, and do this every day. Surely a wedding would happen soon, since her beloved gave her an engagement ring. However, as soon as she moved in, life stopped resembling a fairy tale. Kyle usually went to the university in the morning, leaving Shannon to spend the whole day with his mother. That's when the intrigues of the future mother-in-law began. Whenever Shannon tried to cook something, Mrs. Fuller would interfere. "Sweetie, what are you doing in my kitchen? And what's that awful smell of garlic all over the house?" Shannon blushed and stammered. Good morning. I decided to bake chicken with garlic and spices. It will be delicious." Mrs. Fuller grimaced. "And who asked you to do that? We have Laura, the cook. She's a great cook, according to the menu and my wishes. So that this will be the last time. Clean up after yourself and throw the chicken and your culinary masterpieces in the trash. What were you thinking, taking over my house?" Shannon flared up. "I'm actually your son's fiancé. He invited me here himself. Don't you want your son to be happy? Why should we fight with you?" The woman laughed. "Of course I want the best for my son, except it has nothing to do with you. Kyle is a very amorous boy. He has bought into your pretty face and shapes, but believe me, it won't last long. Soon he'll realise that you're nothing, and he'll dump you. Just so you know." Shannon burst into tears and ran to her and Kyle's room. She locked herself in there and didn't come out until the evening. She was so hurt, humiliated for nothing. In the evening, she told everything to the groom. He promised to talk to his mother, but when he entered her bedroom, he saw that her mother was lying with a towel on her forehead, and there were pills on the bedside table. Kyle became worried. "Mum, what's wrong with you? Are you sick?" The woman moaned quietly, holding her head. "I don't feel well today, son. My blood pressure's skyrocketing." "Are you nervous again? How many times have I told you? And you're at it again. I wanted to talk to you. Please, don't hurt Shannon. I love her very much. She's been crying all day. Why are you doing this to her? She just wanted to make me happy and cook dinner. What's wrong with that?" "Come on, son. Go insult your mother. Your redneck is unbearable. She doesn't know any manners or decency. For your information, all I did was ask her to clean up after herself. You should have seen the mess she made in the kitchen. It took poor Laura an hour to clean it up after her." Such quarrels began to occur almost daily. All this poured out of Kyle from both sides, and the guy finally couldn't take it anymore. He himself had already had enough of living with Shannon. He wanted freedom, clubs and parties as before, not to listen to complaints in the evenings and watch the bride whine. So he, not thinking long, in one of the evenings, took and threw the girl out with the words, "That's it. This can no longer continue. We decided to live together too early. We're not ready for family life. Sorry, but it's better to break up. Pack your things. I'll call you a cab." The girl was in shock. She sobbed and begged her fiancé to come to his senses. She cried that she had nowhere to go and that she had lost her job because of him. But Kyle only grew angry. "Listen, Shannon, this already looks like blackmail. Do you hear me? I don't want to live with you anymore. You'll think of something, find a new job, rent an apartment. What's it got to do with me? We're breaking up." Just like that, Shannon, like a stray dog or an unwanted toy, was thrown out of the house. The cab driver, seeing the poor girl's condition, couldn't stand it and asked where to take her and what happened. Shannon told him everything. She had nothing to lose. "I don't care. Take me wherever you want as long as it's far away from here. I lost my job. I have nowhere to live, and now my fiancé left me and threw me out. So I don't care. I'll have to spend the night at the station. I guess there's nowhere else. I'm such an idiot. It's all my own fault. My friend warned me it would be like this. Only I, a fool in love, didn't listen to her." The elderly cab driver shook his head. He himself had a daughter about the same age, and then suddenly said, "That's a situation. Don't go to the train station. There's all sorts of scum there. And you know what? I was paid generously. I'll leave you some money, enough for a night in a hotel, and in the morning try to get work there. You can live there too, if they'll take you as a maid. It's a suitable option for you. Don't be sour. It'll work out." Shannon looked at the man gratefully. "Thank you very much." The girl rented a room, and the next morning she asked for a job. She was lucky. There was a vacancy, and she was hired, even with accommodation. They gave her a tiny room, a table and a bed, but she was happy about it. In her mind, she thanked the cab driver who had helped her. She didn't want to go back to Lisa and admit that her friend was right about everything. Shannon approached her job with great enthusiasm, ensuring that the rooms sparkled after her cleaning. Everything seemed perfect, except for one thing. The administrator, Frank, had his eye on the attractive young maid and saw an opportunity for some fun. However, Shannon swiftly rejected his advances, leaving him resentful and plotting to find a way to get rid of her. Furthermore, Shannon noticed that Frank was taking home various items from the hotel, such as cleaning products, towels, slippers and bathrobes. With her naive simplicity, she started asking uncomfortable questions like, "Why are we running out of cleaning supplies so quickly? What happened to the package of fragrant soap?" Frank became furious and warned Shannon repeatedly to keep quiet and mind her own business. However, despite his anger, he couldn't find a reason to dismiss her. Shannon worked diligently, never slacking off or being lazy. One evening during a snowstorm, with strong winds and snow pounding against the windows, the hotel was closed for the night due to safety concerns. Late into the night, the intercom rang, surprising Shannon. She asked who was there and heard a desperate and feeble voice saying, "Please, open the door. I'm pregnant and freezing. I have nowhere else to go." Shannon's heart turned upside down. She remembered the time when she was in a similar situation, sobbing in a taxi, not knowing where to spend the night. Without hesitation, she opened the door and let the stranger in. The young woman, poorly dressed and shivering, appeared to be around the same age as Shannon. She wore a thin jacket that was inappropriate for the weather and a silk scarf instead of a hat. Her hands were blue from the cold, and her large belly indicated that she was in her last weeks. The stranger begged, "Please don't chase me away. Just let me stay for one night. I promise I'll leave in the morning. I'm not a troublemaker. My landlord raised the rent, and when I asked for more time, he kicked me out. I'm even willing to sleep on a chair, just so I don't freeze to death." Shannon felt an immense sympathy for the poor girl and was about to let her stay when the administrator rushed in and, upon seeing the situation, immediately began shouting. He scolded Shannon severely, saying, "Are you out of your mind? How could you let this beggar in without any money? This is a respectable hotel, not a homeless shelter. Tell her to leave immediately." Frank pushed the unfortunate woman out of the lobby, and Shannon could hear him berating her as she left. 15 minutes later, when Frank left for home, Shannon quietly opened the front door, hoping that the girl hadn't gone too far. She found her, frozen and destitute, sitting on a bench, shivering and stamping her feet. Snow was accumulating on her, making her appear like a small snowdrift. Shannon softly called out to her, and the girl approached with joy. The maid whispered, "Go around to the back of the hotel, where there are no cameras. I'll let you in through the back door. You can sleep in my room and no one will know. Just please leave in the morning, or I'll get into trouble." The pregnant woman ran around the building and, like a mouse, followed Shannon silently into her room, finding warmth and safety. "Thank you so much. You saved my life and the life of my child," she said, with tears in her eyes. "My name is Thea. I grew up in an orphanage, and my life was tough. After graduating, I was given a room in a dilapidated house that was scheduled for demolition. I found work as a courier and met my fiancé, Paul. He was a labourer at a construction site. At first, we lived in my place, but then there was an electrical fire and everything burned down. We started renting an apartment, and I became pregnant. We were so happy and even applied for a marriage. I was the happiest woman alive. Paul loved me so much. And then he died. He fell from a height, and there was no insurance. That day my life stopped. I still cry and can't get over it. I dream about him a lot. I worked as much as I could as a courier, hiding my belly under hoodies and sweatshirts, but I only earned enough for rent and food. When they found out I was pregnant, they stopped giving me work. Then the landlord decided to increase the rent. He became angry when I couldn't pay a month's rent and threw me out onto the street. And someone has been following me. Recently, I narrowly escaped being hit by a car. It was clearly intentional. I was crossing the street when the car sped toward me. I managed to jump out of the way. In a dark alley, 2 guys wearing hoodies surrounded me, pulled out a knife, and tried to steal my bag. One of them had a dragon tattoo on his neck. Luckily, the janitor scared them off. Thanks to him, I'm still alive. I don't understand anything. Why have all these misfortunes come to me, and why? I'm so scared. I'm all alone in this world. I've never done anything bad to anyone. To tell you the truth, when that man pushed me out of the hotel, I didn't want to go anywhere. I thought it would be quicker to freeze and die and not suffer. I have no strength to fight any further." Shannon only shook her head, and in the meantime warmed tea and made sandwiches with sausage. She handed them to the pregnant woman and said, "Don't cry, Thea. Take it. Eat it. You need it. Have some hot tea. It will warm you up faster. You must have seriously crossed someone's path. Maybe you should go to the police. Lie on my bed. I'll sleep on the floor. We'll get along well together. I understand and sympathize with you. I was on the street myself. I didn't want to live either. My fiancé left me, but kind people helped me, and I gradually got out of it. I moved on. I'm homeless myself. I'm living in a hotel here. So now, let's go to bed. I have to get up early tomorrow, and an hour in the morning is worth 2 in the evening. Good night." But in the morning there was a huge scandal. Frank had come in early for an inspection and was immediately informed that Shannon had let that damn beggar into her room and left her there overnight. Frank was just waiting for this. This is it, the right moment. He burst into Shannon's room without knocking and started shouting, "Get out, both of you! Shannon, you're fired. You'll get your paycheck from the accounting department. This is unheard of. It's not enough that we've taken you in, but you think it's okay to bring in all sorts of lousy homeless? What kind of reputation will we have after that? Decent people stay in our hotel, and people like you belong in a lodging house. And you, mother-to-be, also get up on your way out, or else you'll give birth here and we'll be in trouble." Shannon cried, begged him to spare her, swore that this would not happen again. But Frank was relentless. He gave her half a month's worth of wages and fired her. Both girls wandered sluggishly to the bus stop and cried, each in her own way. Thea wailed, "Forgive me, Shannon, it's all because of me. Now you have nowhere to sleep, you've lost your job, I'm so embarrassed in front of you." Shannon thought to herself, "Well, I've done a good deed. I helped a woman in need, but now have a problem because of it. I'm always finding my own adventure. What kind of stupid character am I? I always feel sorry for everyone." But she answered out loud, "I'll go to my friends, I'll stay here for a while, and if I don't find another job, I'll go back to my parents' village. At least I have a roof over my head. But you, how will you deal with your problems? I can't even imagine. You're going to have a baby soon." Shannon looked at Thea, who was shaking from the cold, and without thinking, she pulled the money that Frank had given her from her bag. She kept some bills for herself and handed the rest to Thea. "Here, take it. It will come in handy for you. It's enough for a month's rent for a room. I'm sorry I don't have more. And put on my hat. You mustn't catch a cold. And I have a warm hood anyway. Well, I have to go. My bus is here. Goodbye, Thea. Good luck to you." The girls hugged each other like old friends and said their goodbyes. Shannon arrived at Lisa's house, who let her in, but with displeasure. And when she heard all about her adventures, she exclaimed, "Oh, Shannon, you're such a fool. You've made such a mess. You've lost your second job in the capital. But tell me, who is this girl to you? Why did you take her in? You even gave her your last money. How are you going to live your life? And as for your fiancé, I warned you this would happen. When are you going to wise up? By the way, the landlady has already found me a second tenant. She'll be moving in soon, so I can't keep you here for long, I'm sorry." Shannon stirred the tea in her glass, realizing that her friend was right about everything. But she couldn't let a pregnant girl freeze outside and sleep soundly herself. That's just the way she is. Shannon sighed heavily and replied, "I understand. I've burdened you like a snowball. I'll try to find a job and a place to live as soon as possible. I'll start making calls right now." 2 weeks passed, but Shannon couldn't find a job, not even as a waitress. She also saw that Lisa was getting more and more nervous, although she didn't show it. Shannon felt like a burden, so after some thought, she decided to give up and go back home. Unlucky her, no matter what anyone said. Shannon walked gloomily to the station, dragging her suitcase behind her. She choked with tears because she hadn't achieved anything. She had wasted her parents' money. Suddenly, an expensive car slowed down next to Shannon, but she didn't even raise her head or care until she heard a familiar voice. "Hello, Shannon. You didn't recognize me, right? It's me, Thea." Shannon looked up and closely examined the skinny, stylishly dressed beauty with a fashionable haircut. She gasped. It really was Thea. But she had transformed so much. Shannon greeted her. "Thea, what a surprise. I never expected to see you, let alone in such an expensive car. You look beautiful. How have you been?" Thea smiled and said, "Get in the car. I'll tell you everything on the way. Something unbelievable has happened to me." Shannon hesitated and replied, "Well, I have a train to catch and I'm going home. The city didn't welcome me. I couldn't fit in, and I can't rely on my friend anymore. I'm ashamed." Thea interrupted her, saying, "We're cancelling your trip and going to my place. Refusing is not an option, or I'll be offended." Shannon was even more stunned and asked, "To your place? Didn't you say you were an orphan, with nowhere to live?" Thea laughed. "That was true, until a couple of weeks ago. Now I'm a rich heiress, and my father is a millionaire. We live in a country mansion. Come on, get in. I don't like chatting on the driveway." Unable to resist the offer, Shannon got into the car, thinking to herself, "I have nothing to lose anyway. What difference does it make when I leave? At least I will hear all the news." When the chauffeur brought the girls to Thea's new home, Shannon was simply astounded by the beauty and luxury. They were greeted by a tall, sickly-looking man who politely said hello. "This is my dad, Gavin MacDonald, and this is Shannon, the very saviour who gave me a helping hand at the most difficult moment and saved my life and your grandson's. By the way, where is my little treasure?" The man smiled and replied, "Don't worry, Tommy is sleeping. The nanny is nearby, everything is fine. Shannon, I'm overjoyed to meet you in person, and sincerely thank you for helping my daughter. I assume you don't know anything yet. Then go and have a chat with each other. I'll look after my grandson." The girls entered the luxurious living room. Shannon couldn't contain herself and said, "Thea, please tell me everything. I still can't believe what I'm seeing." Shannon sat down in an armchair, and then Thea began to tell her story. "When we parted at the bus stop, I planned to look for a cheaper hostel or room, but because of all the stress and worries, my belly started to ache, and I was taken by ambulance to the maternity hospital a week earlier than expected. That same night, I gave birth to Tommy. Thank God everything went well. I lay in the ward, unsure whether to rejoice or cry. Where would I go with a baby in my arms? I was in total despair. They brought him to me for feeding, and I kissed his little nose, crying and thinking about what I could give him and how we would survive. No stroller, no diapers, no roof over our heads. And then, the next morning, an elderly man came to my room with flowers. He looked so frail and pale. He said, 'My name is Gavin MacDonald. I'm sorry, daughter, but I'm your father.' I was shocked, of course, and he told me that he was a rich businessman. He built an entire business empire on his own. Initially, he was just an ordinary travelling salesman. Back then, he was engaged to a nice simple girl named Marcy. They loved each other. She came from a poor family, but was kind, sympathetic, and very gentle. She hoped for a quick wedding, but things turned out differently. My father got into trouble with the mafia, and those were tough times. He had to run away, so he cut off all ties with his beloved in one foul swoop. You could say he betrayed her and disappeared from her life without any explanation. He didn't want to involve her in his problems. He decided it was better for everyone that way. Many years have passed since then. Dad built a successful business, and his career was on the rise. He married another woman. His new wife already had a son named David. On the surface, they seemed to be living a good life, but deep down my father never truly loved her. He just decided to conform to societal expectations. Dad provided for the family entirely. His wife never had to work a day in her life. He treated David as his own and tried to give him the best. However, David always had a cool attitude towards his father and disliked him. Throughout the years, my father's heart was always burdened with regret. He often thought of Marcy, the woman he had mistreated. He knew that no one had ever truly loved him except her. But the weight of his business took a toll on him, consuming him completely. 6 months ago, he received devastating news. A terminal illness with no chance of recovery. It was a cruel disease, rendering money powerless. It was during this time that the true nature of his wife and stepson was revealed. They showed their true colours, eagerly waiting for him to pass away so they could swiftly claim his millions. As his health declined, he found himself alone and abandoned, with no one willing to care for him. In this dark moment, he decided to write a will. Amidst the deteriorating family relationships, my father's thoughts returned to Marcy. He wondered about her life, whether she had married or had children. Through detectives, he discovered that Marcy had tragically passed away during childbirth, and that their child had been placed in an orphanage. While saddened by the loss of his beloved, my father held on to the hope that he had a biological child. The detectives eventually found me, but it took time. Aware that time was not on his side, my father included me in his will. The company was left to his stepson, his wife received lifetime benefits, and I inherited all the property and accounts. However, the cunning stepson caught wind of the will and bribed a corrupt notary to reveal the contents of the will. He shared the information with his mother, and they hatched a plan to find and eliminate me, fearing I would inherit everything. I remember feeling followed that night as my dad's stepson pursued me in the alley, attempting to get rid of me. He even tried to run me over with a car. It was a miracle that I survived. Finally, my father found me in the hospital and came to visit. When I was discharged, he accompanied me, and that's when I saw my stepbrother for the first time. As I looked at him, I realized with horror that he was the same person who had ambushed me in the alley. His tattoo gave him away. I immediately burst into tears, frightened, and confided in my father about everything. My father exposed the villains, and now David and his mother are under investigation. I hope they receive the punishment they deserve and do not escape justice. And that's how it happened. Daddy, Tommy, and I now live in this mansion. I am filled with happiness. I shed so many tears in the orphanage, longing for a home, a father and a mother like everyone else, hoping to escape the teasing of being an orphan. Now, my dearest childhood dream has come true. Shannon listened intently, captivated by the tale that unfolded before her. It seemed like a thrilling detective story or a TV series. Could such a thing truly happen in real life? She expressed her congratulations to Thea, amazed by her luck in finding her father and inheriting wealth so suddenly. Shannon also shared her own story, how she loved her adoptive parents, but yearned to discover her roots and the blood that flowed within her. Thea embraced her friend warmly. Don't be sad, Shannon. If it's meant to be, you will find your roots too. Come, let me introduce you to my son, and then we can have dinner together. Quietly entering the nursery, Thea smiled at her baby, who was just waking up in the cradle, smacking his lips and blinking his eyes. Shannon couldn't help but smile at the adorable sight. Thea offered Shannon to hold the baby, and she did so carefully, rocking him gently. Little Tommy grumbled and wrinkled his nose in dissatisfaction. Thea took him back, and he immediately settled down, covering his eyes. It was a heartwarming moment. Later they had dinner in the dining room, and Shannon felt surprisingly at ease and welcomed in this house. Thea's father proved to be a pleasant and interesting man, radiating warmth and kindness. His love for Thea and his grandchild was evident. He shared his story of finding his daughter and expressed remorse for the wasted years spent with his greedy wife and unloved stepson. Mr. MacDonald was weak, with sunken eyes. He could hardly walk and soon went to his room with the words, "You won't believe it, Shannon, but Thea and my grandson have worked a miracle on me. When I learned about my diagnosis, I completely fell apart. I couldn't even get out of bed. To be honest, I didn't even want to live anymore. My wife laughed openly, and my stepson became rude. They had no intention of taking care of me. All I wanted was to die quickly and escape the pain and despair. But when the detectives informed me about my biological daughter, I immediately felt a glimmer of hope. Holding Tommy in my arms, I decided that I would fight until the end. I am currently undergoing chemotherapy. The fact that I am now back on my feet is truly a miracle. My daughter is taking good care of me, and her concern means the world to me. Shannon, please don't rush to leave. What would you do in the village? Besides, my daughter and I have decided to help you settle down in the capital. She will explain everything to you later. For now, I need to lie down and take a nap." The friends chatted for a long time, taking care of Tommy, and retired to their rooms very late. Shannon had not yet experienced such a peaceful and restful sleep in a long time. In the morning, she was awakened by Thea, who spoke mysteriously. "Get up, sleepyhead. Great things are waiting for us. I asked the nanny to watch over Tommy for a couple of hours before feeding. We need to hurry." Shannon rubbed her sleepy eyes and asked, "What's the rush? I don't understand what's going on. Why all the secrecy?" Thea winked and replied, "You'll find out soon enough. Get ready. I'll make us some tea." An hour later they arrived at the same hotel where they had first met. Shannon was confused and said, "Thea, why are we here? I was kicked out, have you forgotten? They won't take me back, I'm sure of it. I can imagine the unpleasant things that Administrator Frank said to the director." Her friend stubbornly led her inside and smiled enigmatically. They entered the director's office, which was empty. Thea said, "Take a seat. This is now your office. I think it's a cosy workspace. My father and I bought this hotel, and now you are its rightful owner. Do you still think you shouldn't stay in the capital?" Shannon was shocked, tears welling up in her eyes. She exclaimed, "Thea, is this some kind of joke? Are you playing a prank on me? I can't believe it." Her friend showed her the documents and said, "We will finalize everything today. That's why I've been looking for you. This, Shannon, is my way of saying thank you. When you were homeless and penniless, you selflessly helped me when I needed it most. You saved a stranger from death without hesitation. That's why I am grateful to you. My dear, there is no one like you in the world. Thank you. I believe you will be a great leader, honest and fair. So go ahead. I wish you the best of luck." Shannon rushed to hug her friend and whispered, "Thank you, Thea. I will never forget this. Can we start tomorrow? The first thing I want to do is get rid of that obnoxious receptionist. I've seen him steal everything, even toilet paper. I don't need that kind of staff." Shannon took charge seriously. She reorganized the entire staff, retaining only the best employees. She scrutinized all the reports and often stayed late at her new workplace. The staff looked at her with respect, eager to please her. Frank repeatedly pleaded for leniency and to be rehired, but Shannon remained firm. Initially it was challenging for her, as she had little experience in business and often sought advice from Mr. MacDonald. He patiently and meticulously explained everything to her, never becoming annoyed or angry, and very soon business was going on. Shannon hired a professional chef for the mini cafe and began serving delicious and exquisite dishes. They also created a comfortable lounge area where guests could relax, have a cup of coffee, and engage in discussions. Discounts were offered to frequent customers, and a website was launched for advanced seat reservations. These efforts paid off, and there were never any vacant rooms. Shannon's life was transformed, painted with vibrant and new colours. She and Thea became the best of friends, and Shannon became Tommy's godmother. Shannon earned a decent income, rented an apartment, and sent a significant amount of money to her foster parents. At first, her mother was worried. "Daughter, tell us the truth. Where did you get all this money? It's strange. Suddenly you have a rich friend who makes you the head of the hotel? It sounds like a fairy tale. We're excited, dear." Shannon laughed over the phone and replied, "Mum, when have I ever lied to you? It's all true. I can hardly believe it myself. Just be happy for me." Mr. MacDonald had been persistently undergoing treatment all this time. One day, Thea shared with him that Shannon wanted to find out something about her parents. The businessman thought for a moment and replied, "You know what? Let me involve my team again. They can search through the archives of the orphanage where Shannon was
before getting a new family. A week later, the shocking truth was revealed. Shannon hurried to Mr. MacDonald's hospital because Thea said, "It's very urgent." She was worried that things with Thea had taken a turn for the worse. However, when Shannon entered the room, she saw Thea and her father glowing with happiness. "Well, hello, sister. I knew from the very first time we met that you were more than just a friend to me. That's a reason we became such close friends," exclaimed Thea. "You've always dreamed of finding out whose blood runs through your veins, right? So there is a result of the investigation." Shannon was confused and didn't understand what was happening. With tears in his eyes, Mr. MacDonald began to speak. "Daughter, Shannon, I apologize for not knowing about you, for not raising you, and for not helping you all these years, but I am overjoyed to have a family again and another wonderful daughter. My detectives did an impressive job, and this is what they discovered. It turns out that Marcy gave birth to twins, you and Thea. However, she died during childbirth, and they started searching for any relatives. They found an old great-aunt who took pity on them and adopted one of the babies. That baby was Shannon. Unfortunately, she couldn't take you in due to your age, so you ended up in the baby house. But the elderly relative could only care for Shannon for a year before she passed away from a heart attack. That's how you ended up in a different orphanage. Fate separated you for many years, and it's all my fault. I abandoned Marcy then, like a coward and a scoundrel, and ran away, only looking out for myself. Now I realize the extent of my actions. If I had been there, both her life and mine could have turned out very differently. I can imagine how frightened Marcy must have been, how bitter and hurt she felt after being betrayed. I believe my illness is a punishment for my terrible sin. Forgive me, my girl. I was a good-for-nothing father, caring for other people's children without even knowing about my own daughters. Unfortunately, I cannot turn back time, although I wish I could, but I promise to love you both until my last breath and make up for everything we've missed." The three of them embraced each other and sat like that for a long time, holding hands, experiencing these new and exciting moments. It felt as if their lives had been reset and were starting anew. Shannon moved into a mansion, and they all lived together as a family. One day they were invited to an art show, a charity event where the proceeds would be donated to the Cancer Fund. Thea and Shannon looked stunning in their long, form-fitting dresses, which accentuated their flawless figures. Mr. MacDonald, now in remission, walked around the gallery with his daughters. They enthusiastically discussed the paintings and contemplated which ones to purchase. Suddenly, they bumped into Kyle, Shannon's former fiancé, and his unpleasant mother, Mrs. Fuller. Mr. MacDonald, who was acquainted with this family, greeted them politely, saying, "Good afternoon, everyone. Let me introduce my dear and beloved daughters, Thea and Shannon. By the way, Mrs. Fuller, have you decided to introduce your son to art? That's commendable. Look, girls, he's quite the catch. He's tall and handsome." The businessman joked. Shannon felt a shiver run down her spine. She wanted so badly to say some unpleasant words to Kyle and his mother, but instead she smiled charmingly and replied casually, "Unfortunately, Daddy, Kyle is not my type at all. Let someone else have such a treasure. What a lucky bride she will be. The groom is handsome, and the mother-in-law is a sweetheart, aren't you?" With that, Shannon and Thea walked away, continuing to enjoy the artwork. Mrs. Fuller whispered angrily, "Well, look at this insolent woman. She humiliated both of us. I thought she had already gone to her village, but here comes the news. She's a millionaire's daughter. It's amazing. Who would have known? We would be so rich now, being related to such an important person. Kyle, can you even hear me? Why are you frozen like a statue? Go catch up with them and try to make another move on that fool. You did it the first time." The man was furious. "Mum, leave me alone. By the way, if it weren't for you, Shannon and I would have been married a long time ago. I'm sick of your boring paintings. I'm going home. I need to be alone." Kyle returned home, locked himself in his room, and drank cognac straight from the bottle. Seeing Shannon so beautiful and happy today, he suddenly realized what a fool he had been for listening to his mother and rejecting his bride. They truly and sincerely loved each other. The way she looked at him today, "You're nothing," was clear in her eyes. And the worst part is, she's right. Did he have the right to do that to the girl he loved? Shannon believed in him. She resigned from her job and moved out of her apartment. He promised not to betray her and to be there for her. And what happened? He threw her out with no money and nowhere to go. And he quietly continued living, amusing himself with the next empty girls who hung on him in packs. Kyle now felt angry at himself and regretted his actions. He realized that nothing could be undone. It was too late. Thea and Shannon, who had both experienced betrayal and difficult relationships with men, decided to take their time before getting involved with anyone else. They simply enjoyed life. They found and restored their mother's grave, ordered a good gravestone for her, and visited it frequently to pay tribute to the woman who gave them life. Shannon, Thea, and their birth father visited Shannon's adoptive parents. Mr. MacDonald never stopped thanking these simple people for taking Shannon in from the orphanage and giving her the comfort and warmth of a home that money can't buy. The parents were both happy and sad at the same time, constantly saying, "Don't forget about us now, daughter. Come visit more often. Remember, we will always wait for you and love you no matter what. Be happy, daughter. That's all that matters to us. We hope you will get married soon and give us a grandchild." Then they all sat down at the table, had lunch, and enjoyed tea and cake. Shannon's adoptive father held Tommy in his arms, and Tommy babbled in his own language. No one in this large family felt like they didn't belong. They truly felt good and at peace together.